Lisa Crozier. I'm the owner of Spirited. Spirited is a unique tea company based in East Hampton, New York. We use fresh fruit that we dehydrate. We also use the freshest tea leaves and the best ingredients around.
Hi, I'm Michael A. Butler, local Sag Harbor artist, former member of the East Hampton Town Enterprise Task Force, and a board member of the Long Island Museum in Stony Brook. Hi, I'm Martin Butler. I do watercolors. I have a few over here. I actually took a course in college in the 1970s, and that's been my main medium artistically since then. I haven't done anything much recently. I don't show that much, but I plan to get some out this year.
Just push this into. Oh, yes. I can't get your back down. They look too much. Go ahead, take a picture with Louise. So
Mike Tracy. Everything here set up today is for the Juneteenth celebration, and we should be starting shortly. We have the Reverend Walter Sullivan Thompson Jr. here is our host with the Antibodies Task Force in the town and the village, but he is our primary leader for the event, and we have some other speakers that'll be here. We have Huey King, the town historian, is here. And we have some educators from the high school, some students from the high school that'll be speaking, and we have the rabbi from Jewish Center in Hamptons, Rabbi Josh Franklin. He is just running in there. He's going to come back, and I think it'll be a nice time. We have some food, we have some ice cream, and again we have some people showcasing their artwork and their wares and so forth. So it should be a nice time for everybody.
We want to get started today as we all think about history and the importance of history. It has been stated, of course, he who knows not their history cannot move forward. We have been summoned here today by history's grand design to celebrate the liberation and reconciliation of enslaved people that took place in our nation. 200 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, or 2 years rather, after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by the Major General Gordon Griner, who brought forth to the people who didn't know that they were freed in 1865 in Galveston, Texas.
all right now.
The announcement was made that they were free. But the most startling thing about that is how any one man or a people can free anybody. All of us have been created by our Creator equal, that out of one blood that all men would dwell upon the face of the earth together in unity. Therefore, the village and town of East Hampton are here today not to rehearse the pain of the past, but to adopt and interpret the past in order to give new meaning to it as we move forward in the 21st century. What does it mean for this community that is still dealing with hatred and bigotry and injustice towards its citizenry? It is important that we understand that as we gather here today, we understand all of those things that plague our community. But we've come not to gather or to scatter the darkness, but to gather the light. as a community together to understand how important this day means for celebration and reconciliation for all people, and particularly in this community. I want to introduce several of our speakers for today. We will have first and foremost our historian, that is Hugh King, the town historian, Hugh King, after which Arthurine Dunn, an educator at East Hampton High School, followed by two of the students from East Hampton High School that she will introduce at this time. Hugh, if you will come.
All right. Can you hear me? All right. Well, speaking of East Hampton High School, if we were here in June of 1951, Leroy DeBoard would be right over there catching and starring on the East Hampton High School baseball team. If we were in January of 1951, Leroy DeBoard would be right back there in that school building starring on the basketball team.
All right.
And then if we were here in October of 1950, right on this spot, Leroy DeBoard would be coming in here scoring a touchdown because this was the end zone. Okay? Now, if it was May of 1951 and there was a track meet out here and there was a 50-yard dash, let it go. All right. 100-yard dash, a 220-yard dash, a 440-yard dash, a high jump and a broad jump, Leroy would have been selected to win all of those events. He was arguably the greatest athlete to ever come out of East Hampton High School. Okay, now, he was a member of the East Hampton High School's inaugural Hall of Fame class of 2012. When they started the Hall of Fame, the first person they thought of to get into that Hall of Fame was Leroy DeBoard. All right? He said during the induction ceremony that he'd been blessed to grow up in East Hampton. While his family, he said, didn't have much money, we were rich in many ways. He was washing dishes at the Galley. The Galley was a restaurant right on Newtown Lane. And he recalled when East Hampton's athletic director at the time, Fran Kiernan, sought him out and told him to pack his clothes because he was going to Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. He had just been awarded a full football scholarship. If it weren't for Fran Kiernan, I might have wound up a bitter young man. At Benedict, he excelled in football, basketball, and track, earned a Bachelor of Science degree. He was inducted into the College Hall of Fame in 1994. After college, Mr. DeBoard enlisted in the United States Navy, serving from 1955 to 59. Having received an honorable discharge from the Navy, he began a career in education, first as a social worker, then as a mathematics teacher, a guidance counselor. He taught in the public school systems on Eastern Long Island, in the East Hampton, Riverhead, and Patchogue districts. In 1973, he received a Master of Science degree from Long Island University. He also served 2 terms as a councilman on the East Hampton Town Board. Now, Leroy was a real fierce competitor, but after the contest was over, he always had a smile. He was not afraid to speak his mind, but he never held a grudge. And here we are, maybe in the 70s, Leroy now has become an official, a football official, and he's the backfield official. So when the receiver runs out for a pass, Leroy had to follow him to make sure nothing happened. So we're over there, standing right there. The receiver goes out for the pass, and we can't find Leroy because he was ahead of the receiver. He was running faster than the high school kid. All right. He was a great athlete, but he was even a greater human being. Leroy DeBoard. How about that? All right. I'm going to get my hat and get out of here. Here we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. I can't hear you. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Freedom Day. Happy Freedom Day. Thank you all for having me. I'm so very happy to be here. To all of the distinguished members on the board here, to Chief Tracy, he called me on the phone and said he had to run an errand, but he would be back. But I want to thank him for allowing me to be here again. And also to my husband, James, who's here with me as well. And to all of you, thank you so much. I wanted to share a poem that the wonderful Amanda Gorman shared to the world at President Joe Biden's inauguration. It is a poem entitled The Hill We Climb, and it is very important even today. What inspired Miss Gorman to do her poem is that she wanted her words to impact everyone. And she wanted us to have a vision into what our country could still be and where we can still go and what efforts we can achieve so that we all feel loved and welcome and have tolerance for diversity here in this country of America. And we want to come together and we want to heal, because that's what we need to do. We've got to let go of those things that hold us back, that keep us at odds and keep us against each other, because we're here. And, you know, Reverend Martin Luther King said, we may have all come on different boats, but we're all in the same boat now. And we definitely want to make sure that everybody is receiving fair and equal justice in all ways. So in honor of Miss Gorman's poem, I will begin The Hill We Climb. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We have braved the belly of the beast. We have learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we have weathered and witnessed a nation that is not broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that does not mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, all colors, all characters, and all conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we will forever be tied together, victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. But because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we were to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade. But in all the bridges we have made, that is the promise to glade, the hill we climb. If only we dare. It is because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It is the past we step into and how we can repair it. We have seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith, we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption we feared at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left with. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-climbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover. And every known nook of our nation and every corner called our country, our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge, battered yet beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Thank you. In my class, my honors class at the high school, I knew that Juneteenth was coming up. And I wanted my students to know you don't just have a day off on a Monday. I wanted them to know and understand what was going on in Texas and why we have the Juneteenth celebration. And the students had to do reports and projects so that they could learn about Juneteenth. And based on their writings, they learned quite a bit. And many of them even expressed how disappointed they were that America had done such horrible things. But of my students, two brave, wonderful, beautiful young ladies wanted to be here today of their own volition. And I will now introduce two students from my English 9 honors class this year, Miss Mia Sanchez and Miss Maya Tavares, who would like to share their thoughts with you today. Thank you.
Juneteenth, a day of freedom for enslaved Black people and a step closer to equality for all. Troops arrived in Texas and freed over 250,000 people on June 19, 1865. Slavery had gone on for more than 200 years, and it was just beginning to end. People of color have been segregated throughout their entire lives during this time. They were harassed, tortured, and even killed. Many people died for unjust reasons. They were killed for being darker or having less than others. White superiority was high during these times. People of color struggled in this world because they were pushed down by others. People harassed them because they had less, but they were never given the chance to reach out for more in their lives. Not until Juneteenth. This day became a federal holiday in the summer of 2021 by President Bill Clinton. It had been a popular holiday amongst people in Texas and the Black community. But even now, most Americans do not even know what this day means. People may think, great, another free day. But they should not. This day must be thought of. This day was not just anything for Black people. It was a day that proved to all the people of color that we are one step closer to equality. This equality should not have taken so long to reach. Even in present day, people are discriminated. People of color are most likely to be blamed rather than a white person for a crime. People of color will be called slurs. People of color hold in the pain that they experience. We may be a step closer to equality for all, but we are not there. We must learn to treat each other equally, no matter our differences. This is what Juneteenth is all about.
Hi, my name is Maya Taveras, and I will be sharing a poem titled Change. The date, significant. The year, 1865. The Blacks' lives. Their freedom has finally come. Juneteenth, on the 19th. General Gordon Granger rises. He speaks. These words of substantial sizes, announcing the freedom, marking a day that will forever change history. Represented by a 5-pointed star, bursts with life, an arc across the flag. Like a dove for peace, symbols expand on the great impact of this day. No one had ever said the day had news spread of the liberation, the meaning of this celebration, continuing to inform the nation. Struggle and sacrifice, Blacks all around, the natural wealth of the land that is found. The past will last. Red, black, and green reveal what is behind the mask. All they faced, the bitter taste of mistreatment and denial, the lashes and abuse, these can never be excused. Despite the color of their skin, they were still American. The flag represents that, but it should so much more. The rich culture that is adored. They are proud, scream it loud. No matter what the price, it is their life, combined for the flag. This greatness is everywhere, from their toes to their hair. They are not ashamed. We are all the same. We have come so far, from Martin Luther King to Barack Obama. All across the world, the Black freedom has traces, Juneteenth being its birthplace, marking a day that will forever change history.
This is, we still have more to come, of course. I am so happy to see the mayor and other city town officials, village and town officials here. They will not be speaking, and I was informed that just to let you know that they will not, but they do speak in many different ways. Just their very presence here says that they are in collaboration. What we are talking about here as we think about moving forward as both a village and town and working together as a community to be an example to other communities. In spite of the fact of its rich culture here in East Hampton, it does not define who we are. As the people of multicultural community, we are thankful that we have a place that we can come and be respected and be honored. Many of you, I'm sure, had the opportunity to hear Dr. King in 1963 march on Washington at the Lincoln Memorial. He was not the only speaker. It was so many others who spoke before him. But after Mahalia Jackson finished singing her song, there was one Rabbi Joachim Prince, who stood up and spoke just before Dr. King. And he said one of the greatest liabilities in history is not the bigotry and evil of bad people, but it is the appalling silence of the children of light. And as children of light, we have a responsibility to speak out wherever it exists in all of its dimensions. And I ask a great friend of mine, Rabbi Josh Franklin, who is the rabbi at the Jewish Center here in East Hampton, to come and share with us. Because I believe that he believed that our loyalties are to be ecumenical rather than sectional. That we all, as leaders in every sphere of our community, play a part in bringing about unity and harmony. And he and I have worked tirelessly in making that so in our community. So I would ask him to come and share with us today.
Wow, to be compared to Rabbi Joachim Prince, a survivor of the Holocaust, a refugee, and also an incredible speaker and advocate for civil rights at Washington in 1963, as you said, Reverend Thompson. It seems so long ago. In fact, a lot of these dates that we're talking about seem so long ago. 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation. 1865, the date where slaves were actually freed. I think about Passover, where actually Reverend Thompson joined us for Passover this year at the Jewish Center of the Hamptons. We have this line that there's an obligation for each person at the Passover Seder to see themselves as if they were enslaved in the land of Egypt. That's 3,500 years ago. So long ago, it almost seems that it's not relevant anymore. Slavery, that's a thing of the past. No more. And then you think of all the incremental, prejudicial, segregation, systematic racism that exists and still exists today, and it's unbelievable. I know many of you look at me and you're thinking, wow, that rabbi has a young face. I get that a lot, by the way. But I'm going to tell you a story which might be shocking given my young face, and that is I grew up in a city that when I was born was a segregated city, Yonkers, New York. And in fact, not only was the city segregated in terms of the east side of Yonkers being the white side of Yonkers and the west side of Yonkers being the black side of Yonkers, the schools were segregated as well. And it took the Justice Department to come in 1985 and bring a case against the city of Yonkers and the Yonkers Board of Education to tell them you've got to desegregate the schools, you've got to desegregate the housing projects, and you've got to desegregate the city because it's a violation of the 14th Amendment. And for all the time I spent learning in school about the injustices of the past, about slavery in the past, no one ever told me about this. I was growing up living in a school system that was actively being desegregated while I was a student. And when I think of that, just in the 80s and the 90s, that segregation was still an issue in our communities in New York State, that baffles my mind and makes me feel a great deal of shame. In fact, I think the reason why our teachers never told us about the active desegregation while at the same time teaching us about the Emancipation Proclamation was they were too ashamed to admit to their students, my class at the time, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that actually the issues of segregation that you learn about, the Civil Rights Act, 1964, we thought it was done, Brown versus Board of Ed, even before that, 1954, we thought it was all over. Thought it was done? No. Segregation, systematic racism is active in that time period in the 80s and 90s. And I think we've got to realize, even today, that the legacy of Juneteenth isn't just about the end of slavery, the end of discrimination, the end of segregation. These things exist in new forms today. You got to be kidding if you think that racism is done. I'm going to be kidding to think that systematic racism of all sorts, prejudice of all sorts, doesn't exist in New York State, in our country, and even here in our community in East Hampton. Juneteenth is the ultimate reminder to take a look at ourselves, and there's still a lot of work to be done. 1865 is a long time ago, and we've come a long way, but not nearly far enough. So the question that I want to leave you with is, I want you to ask yourselves, what is in plain sight right before us that we are not seeing, that we need to reflect on, and we need to work to actively change? Thank you, Reverend Thompson, for bringing me here.
Arms getting there.
That is exactly my sentiments. I couldn't have said it better. But I thank the Almighty for this opportunity to come and to share with you on this day, and thank the mayor, other city town officials, village officials who are here to celebrate this day. This is not the end, but the beginning. We look forward as a community to collaborate together in each corner to see what each one can do individually and collectively to bring forth light. Mrs. Dunn, thank you for teaching your students the importance of world history, not just African American history, not history of enslaved people, not history about liberation and reconciliation, but an ongoing lesson that needs to be taught in all of our schools at an early age. And we want to have some more students, perhaps next year, of a different hue that can come and share with us. You know, we have a multicultural community, and we want everybody to be able to participate and understand the importance of history. If we don't, we're going to wind up repeating the problems of the past. And it makes it difficult for us to live together in harmony and love together as a community. Do you believe that? Are you ready to do something about it? I only hear a few words. This should be the sentiment of everybody here. If we want to make our community an example, a model to other communities of how a diverse community can come together and love one another and see each other as equal and important to make up the whole. I thank you for coming, and I want you to enjoy the rest of the day. We have music here, we have vendors here for you to observe and perhaps purchase some things. So enjoy yourselves, and we're thankful. Thank you again, Mayor.